Hare Krishna. So today morning we continue our discussion from yesterday on the topic of relishing the Bhagavad Gita. So I'll quickly start with a recap of what we discussed. We discussed four main points yesterday. Does anyone remember any of the 4 points? So does anyone remember any of the points that we discussed yesterday? Yes, raise your hand. Yeah, please.
How Bhagavad Gita can relieve from the distress.
How the Bhagavad Gita can relieve from distress. Yes. The Bhagavad Gita in one sense is a message to free us from what? Lamentation. Yes, thank you. If you had not answered that question, I would have been full of lamentation. So, yes. And so that we discussed that in 3 parts, which are the 3 primary teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. So we discussed how you consider that there are that the Gita begins, the first instructive word is Ashochan, and the last instructive word is Mahashita. So then we discussed how we are freed from lamentation by the Bhagavad Gita. So what was 3 points? Anyone remember? Yeah. So Jiva, Jagdish and Jagat. So what about the Jiva? Indestructible. So we may lose, but we are never losers, because we as souls are indestructible. That's the first point. Then second was Jagat is impartial. So impartial in what sense?
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody gets distress. And even if there is a difference in the degree of distress or the timing of distress, there is always some distress or the other. So instead of fixating on and trying to remove distress from our life, we make peace with the presence of distress, and we focus on a higher purpose. And then that, what is the third part? Jagdish is infallible. Infallible means he does not make mistakes. That actually there is a higher plan for our life, and we are not alone trying to fight against the big bad world. We are actually, Krishna is with us, and we are working, in fact, with him. We are parts of Krishna means we are meant to be parts of Krishna's plan. And I discuss whatever karma may get us to, Krishna will get us through. Okay, thank you. So today I'll focus more on the theme of God's infallibility. We'll begin with this relatively well-known verse. We'll try to analyze it from that perspective. So I'll tell the meaning. Most of you may have heard this verse. So, apichet suduracharo. Even if someone commits a very great wrong action, sudurachar. So, apichet suduracharo. Bhajate mam. That person worships me. How? Ananya bhag. With an emotion, with a disposition that is undeviated. Bhajate mam ananya bhag. Sadhu. Now the word sadhu can mean saintly. Sadhu also means good. Sadhu. Well done. That's the meaning. So sadhu, in this context, it means it's a well situated, good person. Both meanings can be there. Let's go with that one. Previous acharyas have used that meaning also. Sadhur eva samantavya. That person is still to be considered a good person. Mantavya, to be considered. Consider, it's like an instructive word. Sadhur eva samantavya. Samyag. Samyag means fully, properly. That Vyavasito, his determination, their conviction, their direction, in complete conviction they are situated. He saha, because their conviction, their determination is well directed. Samyag Vyavasito hi saha. Apichet suduracharo. Bhajate mamananya bhag. Sadhureva samantavya. Samyak vyavasito hi saha.
Samyak vyavasito isaha.
So let's try to understand the questions which are raised by this verse, and then we'll try to answer them. So api chet suduracharo, if we consider the levels that Krishna is talking about over here. So there are 3 levels. So if we consider, the lowest level is sudurachar, that is like a very bad actions, severely immoral actions. Api chet suduracharo. And then Krishna is talking at the same time of a very high level, that is ananya bhak. And again samyak vyavasitoho. So here we could say it's severely immoral. That's the one level Krishna is talking about. Ananya bhak is undeviatedly, undistractedly devotional. And then apichet suduracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak. If a person, while being undeviatingly devoted to me, does something wrong, still that person is considered to be a sadhu. Now, sadhu can either refer to here, if we take sadhu to mean saintly, or sadhu can mean virtuous, it can mean good. So it can mean both. Sadhu can mean virtuous, sadhu can mean saintly. What is the difference between virtuous and saintly? Is there a difference?
Virtue is, there's not much spirituality involved, but devotion is more spirituality.
Yeah, yes. So there can be many people who are virtuous. Some people who are honest in their job. Some people who always are responsible and keep to their words. So they can be clean, they can be kind, they can be polite. All those are virtues. But saintly is something much, much more. Saintly has the idea of great selflessness, great compassion, great devotion. So saintly is a much higher level. So we could say there are many people who may be virtuous, but people who are saintly are very rare, relatively rare. So now, Krishna, in the next verse, Krishna will say that Kshipram Bhavati. Does anyone know the next verse? Dharmatma. That soon that person will become Dharmatma. Now, if Ananya Bhak, now Bhakti is generally considered to be above Dharma. Being dharmic is being virtuous again. Bhakti is devotional. So what the verse is saying is, then that person will become Dharmatma. So this either the person is all over the place or the verse is all over the place. So it means, so is that person Ananya Bhag devotee, undeviated devotion? Is that person a Sudurachari Vyakti, is a very immoral person, or is that person Dharmatma? Is that a virtuous person? So what is Krishna talking about over here? So here there is a important thing to understand, that there can be sometimes a difference between the intention and the action. Sometimes some people do something wrong because they want to do something wrong. That is intentional wrongdoing. But sometimes some people do something wrong because it's their conditioning. So Krishna is talking here about the intention is good, but the action tends to be bad. And this combination happens because of strong conditionings. A person may resolve that, suppose somebody is an alcoholic, I will never drink alcohol again. And then still there is something called a lapse, and then there is a relapse. Lapse is a mistake, relapse is to go back into mistake, and then you can have a relapse. And you can have a parampara of relapses then. Relapses. It can just go on. So, the thing is, Krishna is talking here about a situation where the person's intention is to be devoted. That person wants to serve. That person wants to connect with Krishna, be devoted to Krishna. But the conditionings are coming like a stormy wave and are sweeping the person away. And in that situation, Krishna is telling over here, Krishna says, I don't look at the actions. I focus on the intentions. In fact, he's not only saying, I do it, he said, you should do it. So sadhu, so in one sense, you could pay, the way this verse is talking about it, that person's intentions are at the level of, the intention is at the level of, it's devotional. The action is immoral. But Krishna says, from this level, that action will also become virtuous. Action will also become moral. Of course, from there you can say eventually it will even become saintly. The action will also eventually become saintly. And Krishna is like Kshiparam. It won't take much time. It will happen. So, now the word mantavyaha. Mantavyaha means is to be considered. Now this word, Kshiparam bhavati dharmatma shashvat shantim nigacchati. That person will attain peace. So what is this referring to in the context of the Bhagavad Gita? The Bhagavad Gita is a conversation between whom? And it is a conversation about what? Sorry? Yeah. Okay. That is the answer that we inferred yesterday. That is true. But literally, what is the question that from Arjuna that drives the conversation? Should I fight or should I not fight? So, this Sudurachar in the context of the Bhagavad Gita can refer to Arjuna's fighting. Krishna is telling Arjuna, even if you consider that your fighting against Bhishma and Drona is a terrible action. Arjuna has asked earlier that Katham Bhishma Maham Sankhe Dronam Cha Madhusudana Ishubi Pratiyotsyami Pujarha Varisudana. He said, I should be offering respects and worship and flowers to express my respect and worship to Bhishma and Drona. How can I be shooting arrows at them? When Arjuna had been training so diligently for practicing archery. So, actually recently I was talking with one devotee. He wrote an article criticizing his spiritual master. And now his spiritual master has sort of left iskcon. So, he's also on the fringes of iskcon. So, he told me, my spiritual master trained me in writing. I never thought I would have to write refuting my spiritual master. So when I was writing that, I was thinking of this verse. He said, Katham Bhishma Maham Sankhe. So Arjuna never thought that he would have to, when he was training in archery, his purpose was all to make Drona proud, to make Bhishma proud. Isn't when we do some service, we want to do that service in such a way that our elders, our superiors, our guides, they feel happy, they feel proud of us. So that was the purpose of his preparing for his archery. But what happened is, now he has to use his archery against them. For him as a warrior, you cannot have a nightmare worse than that. But he had to face that nightmare. So Krishna is saying a rhetorical situation that even if you consider that this action is terrible, but what is your intention? Ananya bhag. Your intention is to serve me. Therefore, your own action, don't consider it to be sinful. Consider it to be virtues, consider it to be saintly. And that's why he's saying afterward that Shashvat Chantim Nigachati, that you will become peaceful. That your action was virtuous, you will realize it eventually. Conversely, he might consider Bhishma's action to be Sudurachar. And how could Bhishma have remained silent when Draupadi was being dishonored? How could Bhishma have chosen to fight on the side of that person who had tried to take everything away from the Pandavas? At one level, Arjuna understood, a part of Arjuna at least understood that, yeah, he has given his word and he has to stick to it. But is that really so important? So even if he considers that that's a Sudurachar, still Ananya Bhav. Bhishma is a devotee. Bhishma from within the Pandavas, Kauravas side, tried to keep reminding Duryodhan of Krishna's glory. And thereby, he tried to get him on the right side. So this Sudurachara can also apply to Bhishma's fighting for the Kauravas. Now he could be fighting for the Kauravas physically on the battlefield, and he was on the Bhishma's siding, you could say, siding with the Kauravas. More than specifically fighting, it's siding means taking the side of the Kauravas. So when he did this, what happened was that even if he says his heart is in the right place, and because his heart is in the right place, therefore eventually he will be redeemed. And we will see what happened was that Bhishma got the most glorious send-off. The post-Kurukshetra battlefield scenario was Bhishma's send-off party. Krishna present himself right next to him, he departed from the world. So that Kshipram, his virtue was revealed by none other than Krishna himself, who actually asked Yudhishthira to learn about dharma from Bhishma. So the whole point here is, overall Krishna's message is patience. Don't rush to judgment, thinking that this person is terrible, that person is terrible. And mantavya applies not just to others, it also applies to ourselves. And we often talk about relationships, and we may have classes on how to have good relationships, how to have good devotional relationship, how to have good relationship with our family members and others. There's one relationship which is very important, it's often not, that is our relationship with ourselves. How do we relate with ourselves? Is our relationship with ourselves healthy? Now, if somebody were to insult us, somebody says, you are useless, you are good for nothing, you are a lazy loafer, you are doomed. If somebody said like that, we would get angry and we would fight back, we would defend. But when those same statements come from inside us, we just passively accept them. Yeah, I'm a loser. I'm worthless. I'll never amount to anything. So if we truly understand that we are parts of Krishna, then no one has a right to insult us. Not even we ourselves. So if we have a toxic relationship with ourselves, then we will be constantly beating ourselves down. So if we consider a pendulum, we can have two forms of unhealthy relationships with ourselves. The first is ego. I can never make a mistake. I was at one place where I was traveling in one part of the world. So the leader of the community was very dedicated devotee, but quite short-tempered. and he would publicly yell at anyone who did not do the service, and everybody was scared of that person. And then somehow he didn't yell at me. I was a visiting guest, so we are friendly. So I told him, a lot of people feel very scared and hurt because you yell at them. So he just said, if they would just do what I told them to do, then I wouldn't have to yell at them. So, okay, that's one way of looking at it. That means there is no mistake on my part at all. No, maybe even if people don't do what I tell, maybe I can speak in a even tone. I can be polite. I can be respectful. So one mistake is think that one negative relationship with ourselves is that I am perfect. So sometimes people have these some affirmations on their t-shirts. So it's interesting, or at least I find it very interesting, that people are so unconscious of what their t-shirts say. Something is there prominently on the t-shirt and I comment on it. Yeah, I didn't think about it. So it's like that. There was one t-shirt which had this: you are perfect as you are. Well, really? Perfect? Perfect means there is no room for improvement at all. It's okay, you are good as you are, you are valuable as you are, you are precious as you are, that's fine. But to say you are perfect as you are, that means there is no scope for improvement, and anybody who says you have scope for improvement, only that person has scope for improvement. So you are not wise enough to realize how I am perfect. That is your scope for improvement. So this is simply ego. But then the other extreme is I am a mistake. Yesterday I discussed that. That I had this conditioning, I had that conditioning, this, there are so many things. Maybe I should never have existed only. My existence itself is a mistake. I am a mistake. And this can lead to profound insecurity. The more I travel in the West and I interact with people in the West, one of the things which strikes me is that how grateful we all should be to our parents. We may have had some difficulties, maybe they don't support our bhakti, there's some issues, but most of us have had decent upbringings. In the West, so many families are broken. And there are many parents who are very responsible still, single parents, single mothers or single fathers. They try to take care of their children. But it's extremely difficult. There was one person who was just practicing bhakti, and he was having severe depression. And then I talked with him, and he told me that when he was around 9 or 10, maybe 11 or something like that. So he was a typical teenage acting out, and his mother yelled at him terribly. And then it just went on and on. He just says something she spoke that completely destroyed my relationship with her. She said, actually, we never wanted you. It was, you were a mistake because our birth control went wrong. Now that may be true. That's not something you tell to a child. So, okay, you get angry. Everybody gets angry, but there are certain statements you never speak. So it's like a child is just a teenage 11-year-old and you're telling him you are a mistake. I told him, okay, from your parents' point of view might be a mistake, but from Krishna's point of view, you're not a mistake. So people can get terribly damaged. If this idea comes into somebody's mind that you are a mistake, that can come from various ways. It can come from what others have spoken to us. It can come from the voice inside us, our own mind, what it speaks to us. So this is a very deep level of insecurity. It's almost pathological insecurity. It is. We need to avoid that. And sometimes the terrible thing is that bhakti can actually increase our insecurity instead of decreasing our insecurity. How might that happen? Have you heard this saying, this statement? I am a fallen soul. But unfortunately, what happens is when we say this fallen becomes so big that soul gets cut off ultimately. So I am fallen. Well, maybe fallen or elevated, we are souls. And souls means we are spiritual beings, we are indestructible beings, we are parts of Krishna, we are precious for Krishna. Sometimes in bhakti, we have standards to follow and we struggle to follow the standards, and when we fail to follow the standards, that creates guilt. And instead of bhakti enhancing our mental health, we may find that bhakti may aggravate our mental health. Because bhakti can sometimes, if not understood properly, if not practiced properly, it can actually worsen our view of ourselves. It can make our relationship with ourselves even more toxic. So it's important to understand that Krishna accepts us as we are. Of course, Krishna wants us to improve. Like every parent wants their children to improve. So Krishna also wants us to improve. But Krishna accepts us as we are. And there are certain conditionings which may take certain time to overcome. Just says, don't lose hope. Don't think that just because I can't give this conditioning. I tried once, I tried twice, I tried thrice, I tried 10 times, I tried 100 times. And still there is a relapse. Okay. That means maybe that conditioning is very strong. That conditioning will take some time to overcome. But that does not mean, see, when I'm saying I'm a fallen soul, we emphasize our fallen too much. That means we equate ourselves with our conditioning. That is also a form of Maya. Yeah, I may have anger issues, I may have lust issues, I may have greed issues, I may have envy issues, okay. But these are conditionings in my mind. These are not me. So we are equal to our conditioning. That is also Maya. You could say that this is the Maya that prevents us from coming out of Maya. When I start thinking I'm my conditionings, then what will happen is, oh, that means I can never get out of this. Because this is just who I am. So we can have a negative self-definition. So if bhakti, it can, so you can say bhakti and our emotional health, our mental health. By this I primarily mean our relationship with ourselves. How do we see ourselves? So it can be improved if we focus is on the soul part. It can be worsened if the focus is on the fallen part. Yes, we are fallen. Everybody is fallen. But the fact is, even if we are fallen, Krishna is still there in our hearts with us. Krishna has not abandoned us. Krishna has not rejected us. And in fact, what this verse emphasizes is that there is nothing we can ever do that will stop Krishna from loving us. We don't have the power to do any actions. We are finite beings. Krishna is infinite. Krishna's love for us is infinite. And therefore, there is nothing we can ever do that can stop Krishna from loving us. Now, this doesn't mean you try out various things to see if Krishna stops loving us. That is not the point over here. The point is that actually, at one level, Krishna's love for us, it is based on who he is, not so much on who we are. We may be purely devoted, we may be impurely devoted, we may be purely devoted to Maya. But it doesn't matter. So now, of course, it matters, but it is Krishna's love for us is primarily based on who he is. Primarily means he is the all-loving parent. He is Surudam Sarva Bhutanam. He is not Surudam Shuddha Bhaktanam. He is Surudam Sarva Bhutanam. He is the well-wisher of every living being without exception. So Krishna's love for us is primarily based on who he is, and secondarily it is based on who we are. That means who we are does matter, but that's not what primarily matters. So this is, you can say 529. This is 411. 411 is ye thamam prapadyante tam sathaiva bhajamyaham. That as we approach Krishna, Krishna reciprocates accordingly. So it's natural that if we, just like parents will love all their children. I was talking with one parent. Now in America, it's amazing, especially among evangelical Christians. There is this, in the Old Testament, there is be fertile and reproduce. So they take it very seriously. I was at an interfaith conference and I met like 10 Christian pastors. I met all of them had more than 5 children. One of them had 13 children. Now, I said, how do you manage that? He said, no, the children take care of themselves. Which is quite interesting. If you see, one of the things which they are saying now is that the way religion will win over atheism is simply through reproduction. Because atheists are materialists and they don't want to take the responsibility of having children and taking care of children. So in the non-religious population, both in Europe and in America, the population is decreasing enormously. So if America is not going off for a demographic cliff, that is primarily because of the immigrants. The Arabs reproduce, the Indians reproduce, Chinese reproduce. Arabs are of course most prolific, but others also reproduce. But the point is that there's people, they have so many children. And so he was telling me, I love all my children, although I don't like all of them. Which was saying. so that means, what it means is, so he was using love more as a verb than as a noun. That is, I'm going to be there for them. But sometimes, especially in teenage phase, they may do things you're not likable. So how a child acts does determine the parent's relationship with the child. At one level, so we could say parent and child, there's a relationship that is similar to, so we can be loving, that is always there. But liking, that can be a question mark, isn't it? So sometimes the children behave in unlikable ways. And the parents are upset, the parents are worried, the parents are angry. So the child's behavior does matter. It's not that it doesn't matter. But how much does it matter? The parents will always be there for the child. And even if some parents are not there for the child, Krishna as the supreme parent is always there for the child, for us as children. So now, if a child grows up to be responsible, the parents have some challenges, maybe financial challenges, logistical challenges, practical challenges, and the child is there. I am there to help you. What can I do? What responsibility can I take? Now that will naturally endear that child to the parents. The parents will love all children, but if a child who is responsible, that child will be loved much more. So similarly, there is a baseline that Krishna loves everyone. And that is not affected by our actions. But beyond that baseline, you can say there are further degrees of love. So if you consider, there's a baseline, Krishna's love for everyone. Now, building on that baseline, there will be, say, for example, this greater love for devotees. Ye thamam prapadin. So those are devoted to him, there's greater love. In case you can say still greater love for pure devotees. Just like parents love all their children, but a child who is reliable, responsible, trustworthy, the parents can count on that child. Their love for that child, their love, gratitude for that child will be much more. So in that sense, there are degrees of love. But nobody is unloved. Everybody is loved by Krishna. And that can be the basis of confidence for a devotee. That yes, I may be struggling in my life because of my conditionings, my limitations. I may not be succeeding in my professional life. I may not even seem to be succeeding in my devotional life. But in spite of all that, Krishna still cares for me. Krishna is still with me. And when we understand that part, then we can stay focused in trying to reciprocate with Krishna. So going back here, I talked about, so what is the healthy relationship with ourselves? That I may make mistakes, not just me, I will make mistakes. I have made mistakes. But Krishna is always with me to help me rise. So Krishna's love for us is always there. And with that love, with that assurance of that love, we all can function enthusiastically. Srila Prabhupada, when he was in the West, especially when he went to America, at that time, we all have heard of this group of people. Has anyone heard of that?
Hippies.
Yeah, hippies. Now, actually, all the followers of Srila Prabhupada were not hippies. The hippies were the most visible group in a demographic that comprised the counterculture. The counterculture was much, much bigger. The counterculture was people who basically were against the mainstream culture. They felt that the mainstream politics, mainstream education, mainstream religion, mainstream society, all of it was corrupted, all of it was superficial, all of it was ultimately valueless. And they were looking for something different. So that's the demographic that Srila Prabhupada reached. Now, in their going against the mainstream culture, many of them ended up succumbing to many toxic habits. For many of them, taking drugs was common. Now in America, in the Western world, actually, taking alcohol is just a normal part of life. In fact, there's one thinker who made this quote, and recently I saw a book has been written on the topic. The taste of wine is the proof that God loves us. If there was not a loving God, how could there be something so tasty? Now there are so many other things that are tasty. You could say, the taste of mango is the proof that God loves us. But no, the taste of wine, it's just a part of their mainstream culture. So taking intoxication, then there is, of course, meat is just a staple part of their diet. So you could say that for many of the followers of Srila Prabhupada, in one sense, breaking all the regulative principles was their regulative principle. It was the unspoken norm. In fact, sometimes people talk about conscience. My inner voice tells me do this, don't do this. Yes, conscience can be the voice of Paramatma, but the conscience can be very culturally conditioned. There's one I was talking with an American person. He said that when he gave up meat eating, he felt very deeply guilty. He said, because I'm going against my family values. He says, my father told me, we are a proud dynasty of beef eaters. You are betraying us. so, it is not just that they're considering it something sinful and you do it. It was just a normal part of their life. Now, Prabhupada looked at his early followers. Now, as I said, the hippies were among the most prominent or most visible part of his demographic. But there's the soul, and then around that, there's the soul and the mind and the body. So now Prabhupada could have looked at the body, Prabhupada could have looked at the mind. And if he had done, these are the least qualified candidates for practicing bhakti. In fact, from a material perspective, there is nothing which would make them even seem receptive to bhakti. But Prabhupada, his vision focused on the soul. So this was Prabhupada's vision. And that is how he was able to focus. It was not on the body, not on the mind, it was on the soul. He saw that they had a spiritual spark. And he just focused on that spiritual spark. So, sadhur eva samantavyaha. And he saw, okay, they had that spiritual interest, they are well situated. And kshipram bhavati dharma, many of them, hundreds and thousands of them, became virtuous soon after that by the practice of bhakti. So that same healthy relationship with ourselves means that Krishna is always with us. Yes, we have our conditionings, and this is not to say that just we stay conditioned. It doesn't mean that we just continue pandering. We try to fight against them. But in that fight, even if we don't seem to be winning, we don't lose hope. So if we understand, I'll conclude with one last point now, that if we really understand that we are always loved by Krishna, then that should give us the confidence that let me fight. We are not fighting against temptation. We are fighting for our relationship with Krishna. And we can, if we define our inner war simply as a war against temptation, okay, I will not succumb to lust, I will not succumb to anger, I will not succumb to this, then it can seem like a losing battle. Because there are times when these conditionings will be way too strong. Like if you consider the graph of our cravings versus time. So what happens is, this craving may be tolerable and suddenly it becomes unbearable. It becomes so high that it may seem impossible, and after that is normal, and suddenly it goes high, and then suddenly it goes high. It keeps happening like this, and when there's a spike. So we could say we all have urges, and those urges have surges. So when those surges happen, we may just be helpless. So if we see our inner war, we all have to fight in this inner war. But if we see our inner war primarily as a fight against temptation, then that will be quite depressing. Why? Because when these surges come, we may relapse. Some of us may not have had deep conditionings from the past. Some of us it will be relatively easy to overcome. But for those who overcome the conditioning of lust, often there is the conditioning of pride. I have become purified. And that can be even more damaging conditioning. So we see it, and this is not a very healthy way of seeing it, I would say. That's just one way of looking at it. But if we see it as a fight for our relationship with Krishna, that means Krishna is still with me. And okay, so if these phases we consider, when there are surges, we can't resist when the urges happen. But even in between those phases, we can persist. So can persist means, okay, when those urges hit me, I can't resist them. But in between, I can persist in my relationship with Krishna. I can chant the holy names, I can serve Krishna, I can study Shastra, I can be in the association of devotees. And if we see that, if it is a fight for our relationship with Krishna, then that will be empowering for us. Why? Because these phases of the urges not being so strong are also there. And generally, those phases are longer. So if we focus our energy primarily on bhajate mam ananya bhag. So these are the phases, you could say, in talking in terms of this verse, this is the phase of sudurachar. But this is the phase of ananya bhag. So if we focus, okay, my intent is to serve Krishna, and whenever my urge is not strong, I will be acting on that intent. I will be determined in my practice of bhakti. If we do that, then over a period of time, two things will start happening. In the same graph of craving versus, what will happen is the urges will become smaller and they will become rarer. So their frequency will decrease, their intensity will decrease. And over a period of time, we will be able to resist them more and more. Over a period of time, we'll be able to tolerate them. So Krishna says, be patient. Be patient. So frequency and intensity, severity, both will decrease. Just continue the practice of bhakti. That is, samyak vyavasito hi saha. So even if we commit mistakes, don't let those mistakes dishearten us. We could say that there can be many ways. Temptation is one way in which Maya distracts us. But actually, far more than temptation. Temptation is clearly an instrument of Maya to take us away from Krishna. But similarly, discouragement is also an instrument of Maya to take us away from Krishna. So first Maya takes us away from Krishna through temptation, and then after we succumb to temptation, then Maya keeps us away from Krishna through discouragement. So temptation may not be resistible for us, but at least discouragement can be resistible. So you could say that, Maya has this two-pronged attack. So in this two-pronged attack, there is temptation. It may be irresistible. It may be irresistible, but discouragement. A fight and I lose. Okay, maybe I lose it when the urges have surges. But after that, what do I do? Do I keep dwelling on that? Why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why did I do that? Or, okay, that thing happened. I didn't want to do it. But now I don't have to keep vegetating on that. Let me now see what can I do right now to serve Krishna. So discouragement is definitely resistible. And that's why even in the association of devotees, we need the association of devotees who are encouraging. If there are some devotees who are constantly discouraging us, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, then we can respect that association, but we are not at that level where their intent may be good, but the effect of that intent may not be good on us. We need association that encourages us, that inspires us, that gives us the confidence that we can practice bhakti and we can keep moving forward by our practice of bhakti. And with that confidence, if we keep moving forward, then eventually even the worst of conditionings can be overcome. And that is Krishna's infallible love for us. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. I started by talking about the verse 9:30 and 9:31. So we discussed essentially that there are three levels in that verse. So how do we reconcile the three levels? The three levels are Sudurachar, then there is Ananya Bhag, which seems to be a high devotional level, and then there is Dharmatma. So what we discussed here is that this is more in terms of intent. The intent may be devotional, but the actions, because of conditioning, may be non-devotional, maybe even immoral. But gradually, the actions will also become moral. So now our whole class was how might this happen? So I discussed about, in this connection, our relationship with whom? With ourselves. So I talked about two extremes, ego and insecurity. What is ego? I can never make a mistake. I am perfect as I am. Now to think that I am perfect is a perfect illusion actually. It is perfect illusion because it is an illusion out of which no one can come out. Because anybody who tells me you have scope for improvement, we will tell them it is you who have scope for improvement in realizing my perfection. And the other is I am a mistake. So this is toxic. I talked about some parents telling their child that you were a mistake. So biologically they may think like that, but spiritually nobody is a mistake. So we need to improve our relationship by knowing that we may make mistakes, but I may make mistakes, but Krishna's love for me is always there. Krishna's love for me is not lost because of my mistakes. So I may make mistakes, but Krishna still loves me. And then we discussed about Krishna's love elaborately, but Krishna still loves me. Then we talked about Krishna's love, how it is both unconditional and reciprocal. Krishna's love is primarily based on what? Who he is. Yes. It's like all loving parent. A parent loves all their children. But it is also primarily it is based on who he is. And secondarily on who we are. So if a child is responsible and a child is trustworthy, naturally the parents have a deeper bond with that person. And then based on this understanding that Krishna still loves me, so we have room for improvement, but there's a baseline love that is never lost. Even the Sudurachara, still we don't have the power to do anything that will stop Krishna from loving us. And based on that last point we discussed is that we focus the inner war not on against temptation, but it is for our relationship with Krishna. That means we focus on, okay, there may be these urges which have surges and they are irresistible. But what do I do? Even if we can't resist the urges, we can persist between the urges. My relationship with Krishna is not defined solely by whether I can resist temptations or not. What do I do other times? If I maintain a service attitude, if I try to keep connecting with Krishna, then what will happen by that is, eventually the temptations, they will become lesser in frequency and intensity. And that's how we will become Dharmatma. We will also become well situated. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments?
Intent and action. So if someone's intent is good, right, but the action, right, whatever the activity he is performing, or for example, if he is earning money in a bad way, right, but he is utilizing in Krishna's service, so how we can justify it?
Okay, if somebody is earning money in a immoral way and then they are using in Krishna's service, well, every statement has a context, and this statement is referring, when I said the intent is good but the actions are bad, that is referring more to actions coming from our conditionings, the conditionings being very strong. So somebody who is earning money by unethical means, that is not a conditioning, that is a choice. Nobody can say that I am forced by my conditioning to be corrupt. No, that's a choice. See, there's a difference between generally something which happens because of conditionings, it is more impulsive, it is more hot-headed. So if you consider lapses can be impulsive. And impulsive means the impulses just they come, and after the impulsive they can even become compulsive. That means they are very difficult to resist. But that is different from something which is very calculative. Calculative means, so if somebody is earning money by unethical means, it is one thing for somebody, say they're working in a responsible, honest job, and suddenly somebody offers them some bribe, and maybe in the urge of the moment they can't resist it, they take it. That's one thing, that's an impulse. But if somebody is involved in a job itself which involves some kind of, the whole job is itself underhand, you can't call that impulsive, that's calculative, that's knowingly done. So I don't think that kind of thing can apply to the Sudrachar. Of course, it's one thing. Say suppose somebody, I was in New Zealand and there's one devotee I was talking with, he said that his parents came about 3 generations ago they came from North India, they were among the first immigrants to New Zealand. And he said they started a hotel, they were in the hotel business, and their hotel was a non-veg hotel. And they started with a whole chain of hotels, and they're hugely successful. And he was the main successor in that chain. And he said we have a joint family which is almost 150 people now. And everybody, in one sense, he was the leader. And he said that when he started practicing bhakti, at one level his family was happy because he's going back to their culture. But when he said, okay, we will not have any meat in the industry, they said, this is nonsense. They said our whole, because there's a family-run chain of restaurants, and a lot of their earnings was coming from that. So he says it was very difficult for him. So then he said, okay, I'll make a plan. He said that he talked with his family and he said that this is one restaurant which I won't change the whole thing, but this one restaurant I'll make it vegetarian and I'll take full financial responsibility for that. And you see how it goes. If it goes well, then we'll do it. And it took him years. He said he put that plan in action. It took him 15 years to change all his restaurants. He's been practicing bhakti for 25-30 years. And his property was in millions. So it was huge property. So it may take time for him. So sometimes some things, somebody may be so caught in an unethical business that it may take time for them to come out of it. That's not, I would say that is not so much unethical. It's against devotional principles. Legally, it's not unethical to have a restaurant with non-vegetarian food. From our perspective, it's unethical. So somebody might be there, and for them to come out of it may take time. But if somebody has no intention of coming out of it only, I think, okay, I'm giving some donations, so everything is all right. Well, that thinking is not all right. Okay. So yes, last question. Yeah.
Okay, so there you talked about how there is an inner fight. So inner fight with temptations and inner fight to develop a relationship with Krishna. Now, while fighting this, in our movement, we also have to share it with others. So how how to do that, because we are fighting, so that means we are not perfected it. So while we are not perfected it, how can we share with others?
Yes, the way to share with others is to pretend to be a pure devotee. No, we don't have to do that. We can just say that these are weapons, this is the inner war, and these are weapons that are helping me. It's not that I have won the inner war. A lot depends on the attitude that we take. If I take it that I am perfect and you are a fallen soul and I am going to come and deliver you, be grateful to me forever. Then that attitude, if we relate with people with that attitude and then they see some fault in us, not only will their faith in us will get damaged, their faith in the process of bhakti itself will get damaged. But if we are upfront doesn't mean we have to wash, as they say, wash all our dirty line in public. We don't have to tell all about our personal struggles to everyone. But if we are basically humble and real in the sense that these are weapons that have helped me, but it's a war that is still going on. And I'm fighting this war, and these weapons have helped me, these may help you also. So we are fellow warriors. So if we have that attitude, then we can share. And in general, if you see the way the world is changing, what people value. Now, this is in the West, but I think it's happening more and more in India also. We often think purity is important. Well, it is, but what people value at us is authenticity. This is what people value much, much more. Now, of course, from our tradition's perspective, purity is the force and we want to be pure. But Prabhupada did not make purity a precondition for sharing bhakti. Isn't it? Prabhupada said, even when we are conditionings, we see sharing bhakti as a part of our sadhana. Just as we don't say that, okay, I'm so impure that I can't chant the holy names. No, I chant because I'm impure and I want to become purified. So similarly, we speak about Krishna so that we become purified. Some people say, walk your talk. Have you heard this saying? Walk your talk. Yes, that is true, but the key part of bhakti is talking is also a part of the walking. Isn't it? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. Kirtanam. So talking is also a part of the walking. So we see our sharing bhakti also as a service to Krishna. It's also part of our sadhana, part of our purification. So if you're authentic, in the sense that, okay, this is where I am at, and this is where I am trying to rise up. And these are principles that can help you to rise up also. Then I don't think there's any problem. Okay. So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanande.